Take a trip down to the bayou in the Swampberry Moonshine Jamboree. We teamed up with Studio Phantasms to bring you a raucous one-shot adventure full of gator folk, catfishing, and a whole lot of moonshine. We wrote the adventure, and they designed the minis. It's a sweet little bundle, and it's totally free for the month of May. Just head to sessionzerostudios.com/phantasms and sign up to grab it. Don't wait. May's free, but once it's gone, it's gone.
We all have strengths and weaknesses as DMs, but that's why I appreciate our sponsor, worldsmith.io. If you're not confident making a map quickly, use their map generator. Or maybe you're much better at making new characters than you are creating a new NPC or monster stat block. Don't worry about that either. It has separate generators for each of those. I even made an evil reindeer mini-boss for my holiday-themed campaign. The same is true for items, quests, traps, and more. Whatever you don't feel confident in creating, or whatever you don't have time to create on the fly, you can use worldsmith.io's generators to bring your D&D campaign to the next level, which, as you know, is what our podcast is all about. Check out sessionzerostudios.com/worldsmith-podcast to learn more and support our show. Link is in the description.
Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM. My name is Justin Lewis, and I'm here with my compatriots Tanner Wayland and Robert Van Auken. I got that right this time. But today is another special episode where we continue to work on our Homebrew project that we've been working on for some time. And for those of you who are new to the show, How to Be a Better DM is about helping you create better stories as you DM sessions of D&D. And this specific kind of segments, these string of segments, are designed to help you work on homebrew projects as well as learn how to collaborate with others. And I know for myself, I've learned a lot from this experience. And let's get into it. Anywhere particularly you guys would like to start?
Yeah, well, I have, so hi, good morning. Had a little technical difficulty there the second that we started, of course. Yeah, I was looking over our stuff, and I'm happy to say that I think we're very quickly encroaching our official first draft. Now, for the listeners out there, we've just been brainstorming on a collective Google Sheet here for about 3 months now, and we've just been putting stuff up and putting stuff up and putting stuff up and chopping stuff off. And I think we have enough to actually, upload to like an iteration of the product at this point. I don't know. What are you guys thinking? Is there anywhere specific you guys were thinking about jumping into?
No, not for me. Not off the bat. I do think that the places where we are lacking the most is probably just like the plot steps. Just getting a finalized version of that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something else, but I do feel like we've done bits and pieces here and there, and I'm pretty happy with it. I did finish up my the abilities for the bells of the trials that I did.
Do we want to go over those?
We could, because I was worried about one of them being too OP, but I was also like not too worried about it because this is just this is a one-off adventure. It was the lunch chime, and it was basically making one they wouldn't have to eat, which doesn't really apply, but I thought it's topical. The second ability of the lunch chime was that at meal times, throughout the day, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, they can summon once a day they can use a summon elemental spell, except instead of the earth, earth, air, fire, water, it's a food elemental, just made out of like whatever food they can think of, and it has the same stat blocks as a what did I call it? I forget, but the same thing as what the summon elemental summons. But yeah, I did that, and I was like, oh, that's fun, like a little summon elemental. Elemental spirit is what I was looking for. And I was like, is that too overpowered to have it like at meal times? I was considering if you could do it once a day or, every meal time. But the kind of restriction is it has to be a meal time, otherwise you can't summon it.
What about the one of the players? I guarantee you is going to be like, it's a mealtime somewhere. Like what if they say that?
Right. Well, going back to the lunchtime in general, I thought we might have to just tweak up one or two things about that, because as I was going through, we wrote this for like 4 vacant bell warden positions, right? So the whatever monastery the meal monastery would be short a bell guardian, right? So while I love and I want to keep the sort of like lightheartedness of the lunch chime, because I do really like it, and I like the idea of summoning some kind of harvest once per day. I think probably would work best, be it a food elemental, a food golem, or just poof, I don't have to count my rations anymore because I can produce food and water once a day, which is actually a really cool boon, actually. I think we do need to like consider like, what is their what is the name of their bell, and what is the name of like the ability that, well, I don't know, like who's their monk that we would be like the liaison to lead them into this challenge, kind of thing. Because
I agree with that, in the case that like I did write it very like whimsical, and that kind of like, while that's fun, it also doesn't fit necessarily as cohesively as it could within the whole narrative of, we're trying to replace bell wardens here, where I wrote it kind of like, hey, these extra trial people were standing around and the lunch people needed help and they just happen to have a bell, and that kind of like takes away from the importance of the bells. So I agree, just kind of adding a little bit more gravitas to it.
We very well could keep the bell warden alive for this particular monastery, and it just simply won't be a bell that can be won. It's just they're an NPC if you want to do it that way, or if you want to have them. I think there would be a sense of irony if their bell warden was poisoned, kind of further suggesting foul play. Like, how does the bell warden of the food bell get poisoned?
Actually, that would be perfect. Because if the bell warden was missing, that would explain why they were behind and they needed help with the lunch rush, right?
Right. Oh, that is cool. Yeah, that's a cool idea. Actually, I like that then. Maybe we'll work that in. Because as it stands, go ahead. You can go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to say, so does that mean for kind of assignments, we need to add one more trial description mechanic in what bell you receive? Like a 4th one?
Well, I think you have that though, right, Tanner? You wrote a bell that they would win.
Well, so there's one for each of us.
I thought it was the lunch chime, but we could rename it if necessary.
So isn't there one for each of us, and then Tanner also wrote kind of the optional one?
Oh, right. So I guess so. So we would just add another one of these boxes and mark it.
That's what I'm asking. Do we need to add another serious one, or are we just going to say it's either 3 bells or 4 bells that are available, depending on what the DM wants to do?
I would say that. I would say that one. If the DM.
Yeah. If we're going to leave it as an optional, then we don't really have to do anything. Then it's tight. Then
I probably would tweak it a little bit to kind of match more, like you were saying, but I think those are small tweaks, so I'll take care of that later.
I don't know. In my head, I had that we were making 4 serious bells only because we projected like a party of 4 players. But if you think that's true, we should keep it as 3, then it's completely acceptable.
That's a good point. No, we could do. In my mind's eye,
it's usually 4 to 6 players. I'm always geared towards that.
Yeah, same. I like that. We could do it. Okay. Yeah, I think that we have it as like a recommended, but then like have a note that's like, hey, if you're running out of time, cut this trial.
Right. Yep. That's perfect.
So what I'm hearing is the lunch chime, the trial of the lunch chime is the 4th bell, but it is the optional cutout extra fourth bell.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so we don't need to add another trial/bell.
Right. And I think this would be a good place for us to like dig in for today. Was maybe we work backwards because we've worked forwards so much.
Sure.
But I think we're like, yeah, let's imagine the final showdown now, if we would. And I think we built in this nice little option for the DM to decide whether the bad actor is going to be like the head abbot, which I think we all kind of are endorsing. But just in case that's too obvious, they make it the quiet ones or whatnot. But I've kind of imagined the courtyard now, this final location for this battle. And we've got the bells, the large bells themselves, and the abbot has kind of, usurped the power of each of the bell wardens, and he's now using that to kind of against the party, right? And so we've got the Frozen Fist, we've got the enduring. Hold on, I'm sorry if I'm messing up the names of your of your inventions here. We have the Way of the Frozen Fist, the Lost Ones, right? That was yours, Justin, and then Tanner's was the Enduring Embrace. Is that right? So I'm thinking of what powers would those bells bestow on the big bad to be using against our party?
I can tell you one thing: the Bell of the Lost Ones allows you to affect weather for 24 hours once a week. So I think that lends itself very nicely to cinematic, like environmental description, narrative description, but also the ability to cast lightning bolt, like snowstorm, or a few of those kind of spells.
Perfect. The Way of the Frozen Fist, the boon was, and maybe this is too tiny, was you have resistance to cold damage, right? So disadvantage for the big bad when attacking with cold, frostbolt, that sort of thing. And then the boon was you get to add a 1d4 frost damage to any of your damage rolls, right? So I'm thinking in my mind's eye that if the big bad standing in the courtyard fighting our group of heroes takes some of the Frozen Fist, he'll cast frostbolt, he'll shoot some kind of hail or ice storm at them, and anyone who has acquired the bell from the trial earlier gets some kind of resistance to that attack, right? And this is where I was thinking about the food one. Like I don't know what the food bell, like throwing bananas and rotten tomatoes at the players.
Yeah, I looked at a couple things for the Trial of Everlasting Patience, or the Patient Bell, because of the nature of the trial, which is essentially it's a roll off, like a prolonged roll off, seeing between Constitution, Wisdom, if who can last longer, right? And so I was like, okay, the buff that I was thinking, and maybe we need to add a more flashy one. But 3 times a day, the player may choose to re-roll a failed Constitution or Wisdom ability check or saving throw. And so, it's great for a player. It's not all that exciting for a boss, for the big bad.
Actually, I think if we get a little creative here, I like the idea of maybe he usurps the power of the main bell there to inflict a condition on a character. So like they have like a exhaustion or restraint or whatever. We can call it like an anxiety or a panic, right? The opposite of patience, and maybe for one round, if you're hit by that particular attack, you have disadvantage on concentration checks, or disadvantage on it would really be something that would hurt like a spellcaster of some kind. The duration of any spell is halved in some way, shape, or form. I think that could be a cool idea.
The other idea we could do is kind of tied in with how they defeat the abbot. So the way I'm imagining it is they somehow have to sever the ties from the bells that he has. And we could incorporate those constitution checks or concentration checks. Like when they try to sever that tie somehow, he can roll a concentration check to see if it is actually severed. And 3 times he can just decide to pass. That might be another interesting way to do it. Also, one question I had was, are there only 4 bells total, or are there 4 bells being replaced?
That one, second one, right?
So in that case, we'll probably need to decide on some other bells that exist that he also gains power from, or something like that. Otherwise, it may not make sense that.
Right. I could be wrong, and I could be mistaken. I thought we said on the last session, because we had originally like 12 bells,
Right.
and we wrote I thought we said that we were only going to make four bells to avoid having to do, because otherwise, honestly, like,
Okay.
I would love to do like a grand scope campaign where there's 12, and I think that'd be great. I think that's cool for like further products, perhaps even. I think to make this simple, because like the only other explanation we could have is there are 12 bells, and as using his powers as the abbot, forget the big bad powers, he kind of like sent the other bell wardens away to investigate like a false trail entirely, and so maybe we are the only ones left in town. This way we don't have to worry about where the other bell wardens are. Otherwise, it could be a nice Deus Ex Machina to just have them all show up and help out in the big final.
Well, one sort of fix to that might be like, so in describing kind of the rift opening and the giant evil entity stepping through and starting to lay waste to the city, I've described that other adventurers, for now, wait, what is it? Another group of adventurers. We could easily turn that into like what other bell wardens there are.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
so like they're distracted fighting the big bad,
exactly.
and you're the only ones back at the base.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then maybe what we can do is kind of cheat a little bit and be like, as a DM tip, whenever the abbot does anything not described by one of these bells, describe it as if it's coming from a different bell, but like somehow we need to explain that because those 4 bells are so new, his connection to them is more tenuous, and if we can sever those, kind of his connection all around will be severed, or something like that. So that way we don't actually have to say, this bell does that bell does that. It's more of, and from this random bell, he draws, a magic weapon that he hurls at you or something like that.
Right. Or again, even the fact that our 4 bells or 3 bells are vacant because they don't have a bell warden. He has a less, he's got a stronger grasp of the vacant bells and a more tenuous grasp of the ones that are currently filled, because they've kind of, their powers are still being used by the wardens themselves, who are off fighting some other big bad. And maybe we just kind of force his hand, because I really like the idea that he starts off as this nice guy. He takes this kind of position, and that speech that you wrote, by the way, is awesome. I love that. And it's clear that he's getting agitated, and nobody takes the bells seriously. So he's going to take it upon himself to save everyone by usurping these powers. And with great power comes great responsibility. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. He kind of becomes the big bad inadvertently, or even just maniacally. So I like that idea where his power over the vacant bells is stronger. And then if we want to make these 8 other bells, and I don't know why I have 8 in my head, maybe just because there's 12 ticks on a clock, so I'm thinking 12. We could write 12 other powers, if we want to give that. Again, I think the layer action should be I think we should have. I want that final battle to have that kind of scope and sequence that we were thinking about.
Yeah. And I definitely think that we could narratively say that there are X amount of bells present, and give the abbot inherent powers. And like I said, just say that when he casts magic missile, it comes from a particular bell. We don't have to be specific. We don't have to say this is the bell of, Jason Johnson's something, and I think that might make it a little bit easier for us. One other question is, how do we make it apparent the relationship between the abbot and like the enormous god-ending monster that steps through that the other adventurers are possibly fighting, or the other bell wardens are possibly fighting, or do we want to nix that and just say it's the abbot?
So originally, and I liked this idea, like, because the whole idea is that, like, hey, he's not like in line with these creatures. He just thinks that the world needs to know what the threat they are. You know, let them run amok for a bit, and then the monks get to swoop in and be the heroes eventually, right? So, like, in a way, he's also downplaying it, you know, because he's like, oh, it's fine. We took care of it before. Let's just let them run wild for a bit. People will appreciate us again. You know, that's why I was thinking. But did you guys have some
the
other
syndrome
idea?
effect we said last time? The syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I think that was like a perfect 1-to-1, right? So he probably has the best interest of people. He just is going about doing it all wrong because he's jaded that, you know, people have kind of lost the faith a little bit.
So I'm just playing this out in my head. We have the adventurers kind of confront the abbot, and essentially, in my mind, I'm thinking they have to see him doing something. So they see the rift open. They realize, oh my gosh, these bells need to close the rift, right? Like, that's what we have to do, which we also need to help them understand somehow. They get to the bells. They see the abbot doing something that makes them like, hey, you're not doing the right thing. What would that thing be?
I got it. All right, so after the trials, they're invited up to the courtyard by the abbot, and they think they're going to be receiving some kind of, you know, feast or in their honor, or maybe he even says, you know, we'll feast your honor. Come to the courtyard. You know, we'll have a private dinner with the victors and myself. And he gets them up there, and he starts to perform a ceremony that, again, they're still thinking there's some kind of reward or meal coming, and perhaps he saps their boon, the bell that they've won, and he turns around and he uses it right in front of them to open the rift. And now there's this what just happened kind of moment. And then he could turn around and do his evil monologue, you know, I thank you for bringing these to me. It would have been much harder for me to go about, you know, winning each of these trials myself without drawing the suspicion of my fellow bell wardens, right? I couldn't have done it without you. And now there's this moment of, oh, we just helped this guy, right? Maybe one of our monks that was hosting the trial shows up in time to kind of explain how to now defeat him before he jumps out and gets, you know, clobbered or something like that. But once they see him do this thing, right, we can have him reveal the plan, just like evil monologuing. You know, I needed the power of the bells to open the rift, and once everybody remembers the threat, they will once again be pious and come before the temple of the Golden Bell and remember who we are in the service that we perform. And then maybe he attacks them like flat on, right? And then they kind of have to scramble to figure out how to, you know, disconnect him or summon the paragon. You know, he thinks himself the paragon, right? That's his hubris, right? I will act as the paragon this time, right? Paragon will never return because we don't have enough bell wardens, or we don't have enough faith, or we don't have enough whatever. You know, I'll defeat this beast, and the beast is now running amok and being held at bay by the other bell wardens while our heroes try and defeat the abbot in some fashion. So I would think.
So in that case, that turns the abbot from good intentions, you know, lining the road to hell, to I am actually nefarious and I will commit murder in order to see my plan through. Is that how we want to take him?
Well, I think that both of them, they're not too far apart, honestly. Because the other way that you could do it is, like, just emphasize throughout, like, this progression that, like, up in the sky, because didn't we kind of picture it as, like, up in the sky you see almost, like, cracking or, like, something, you know?
So the way I've like pictured it is it's like Northern Lights, that are pervasive every time that there's what's it called, a Chimefall Ceremony, and then as it progresses, the northern lights become darker. You start seeing like cracks almost through reality within the lights, as if the lights themselves were a shield and they're like breaking, essentially.
Yeah.
That's how I've imagined it.
Even like if we used like a sound motif or analogy, like it could almost look like there is a crack, but it almost like vibrates, or it like pulses as if to like a beat,
Yeah.
or
Harmonic.
like, yeah, and then once it actually is breaking, it turns to a flat line and then just opens,
Yeah.
and that's when
I'd say
silence reigns.
I'd say the light around it, or energy around the hole, should like pulse. The
Yeah.
hole itself should be still and unmoving and just dark, as if to say like the music is trying to hold back this silence, but the silence is getting bigger or something.
Yeah, I agree, but either way, I think that what we could do for the abbot is like, okay, like everybody, all the bell wardens seem worried about getting the ceremony done so that we can close this up, but then the abbot seems to be stalling, and he's like, oh, hey, we got time, don't worry about it, and he like sends the players to the other end of the monastery for their congratulatory feast or whatever, and that's when it opens. And then the bell wardens are like, hey, the abbot's not here, players, go ring the bells, we're gonna go hold this off. And then the players arrive at the bell sanctuary or wherever, and then that's when they see the abbot, and he's like, I'm sorry, I can't let you ring those bells yet, or something like that, right? That's I see either Rob's version or that version, and I think either would work well, frankly.
So, kind of back to my point, like
Who is he?
the
right?
abbot.
Like, what's his...
Well, yeah, I think it kind of hinges on like the evil of the abbot. So in Rob's version, it's premeditated murder. His plan is to have a feast with them and kill them, right? He knows he's going to take their stuff and kill them. In Tanner's version, he's trying to stop them, and he probably gets to the point where he's like, you know what, fine, I will have to kill you, or something like that. So my question before is which version do we want to display? Like, which villain do we want to have? Like, do we want to have Darth Vader Anakin, or
Right.
like cutting off Mace Windu's arms Anakin?
I almost kind of want to leave that up to the DM, right? Like, I think if we say that the beat is, forget the script for a minute, but if the
Okay.
beat is the abbot is going to take the bells or the charge from the wondrous item that they got from their trial and use that to open the rift. At that point, the players are probably going to attack him anyway. Is he going to defend himself with lethal intent, or is he going to defend himself with sort of delay, with the intent to delay them, so that either way he's a murderer, because he's planning on releasing the giant silencer here, and he knows it's going to wreak havoc on the town below and Jinglefell and the monastery of the Golden Bell. So he's kind of premeditated that, no matter what, whether he plans on killing the PCs or not.
That is a good point.
He is kind of a big bad dude in that respect. Now, my concern now is, where is the logical place for the other, if we're going to do other bells and other bell powers and other bell wardens, where are they during this ceremony that they're going to announce the new bell warden? It stands to reason that like the current bell wardens would be in the sanctuary,
Sure.
and witness the abbot do this, or is there some kind of diversion beforehand? Does he try and kill them all? That's a whole other element now. That in terms of plot structure is there to deal with. Not that big of a deal, but just one I want to pin down. And I also remember, I could be wrong, didn't we discuss? I thought, Tanner, you had the cool idea too. I think it was we talked about like a regional effect from the silencer?
Yeah.
Like they couldn't speak or something like that. We said that there was
Oh,
going
yeah.
to be like no sound, right? So that monologue and whatever diversion for the other bell wardens has to be performed before the release, and that regional effect takes place where there's like no sound.
Yeah.
So,
So
and then the
if we
only
do
thing that can
if we
make
do that.
sound is the bells.
Yeah.
So
Right,
that's a
and the
good
hand
point.
and the hand gestures, right?
and I
The
think
quiet ones have.
so
Oh yeah.
here's what I wrote up for that regional effect. Here's what I say we do. When it comes to the finale, like the trial ends, we can literally say, Dungeon Master, there are two options here. Whether you want, well, now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't think it's as good of an idea.
It's always the case.
So I really do like this idea of like the Bell Wardens and the new player characters go to the same place. They both realize they've been bamboozled at the same time, and they see the large monstrosity, and the experienced old Bell Wardens are like you guys can't handle this. We have to go distract it, and you guys have to go ring the bells, and that's the only way this is going to work. I really like that because it does kind of explain in a very simple way, like, hey, people, this thing is not actually the big bad. You got to go find out who the big bad is or something. And maybe what we can do is like the abbot is actually the one who's saying like, oh, this big monster's here. You guys need to go defeat it because I don't know, maybe not.
Well, if you and correct me if I'm wrong, in our lore, these bells have a little bit of every monastery's power to summon the paragon. And
right, that's right.
So maybe the bell warden, the other heroes can say, this is beyond you. You're not full bell wardens yet. Go ring the bells and summon the paragon while we go hold it off and stall it. So then they go run to this area only to find that the abbot is waiting for them as well, because rather than summon the paragon, he wants to be the paragon. He wants these powers. Mm-hmm. He wants the power of all 12 monasteries. He feels he's the only one responsible for it. And he'll offer them like the illicit deal, ring your bells and give me your powers and I'll go defeat this thing.
Okay.
Get in my way and I will unfortunately have to, dispatch you. So there's that kind of illicit bargain being made. Kind of a cool role-playing moment where it's like the players could, if they were, neutral characters, or I don't think too many DMs run evil characters, but neutral characters might consider this idea of, let's see what he's got to say. Okay, so we give him this power. What do we get out of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So here's what I say we do. The abbot says, join me, new bell wardens and old bell wardens, for a feast, right? Where we will celebrate your honor. And the feast is at a different place than the bells. And during the feast or something, the abbot takes a really long time talking and the rift opens up. Kind of like Tanner was saying. And then the abbot's like, oh, we need to go ring the bells. You experienced bell wardens, go ring your bells, which are in towers surrounding in the city. And you new bell wardens, come with me to the central bell or something, where we've placed all of the chime-fallen bells, kind of in a central location. And on the way, he's like, we need to summon the paragon, but we need a paragon, kind of having him try and like convince them. And then when they get there, he offers them a choice, like, give me the powers of the bells or something. And if they say no, they go and ring the bells and no sound comes out. And then you can like have them turn and look at the abbot and be like, I gave you a chance. And you can like see streams of magic going from the bells to him. But it's like dark energy or something, so it's not exactly the same.
How will the players know to ring the bells? So he says, "Give me your powers," right? So I can go do this. And if they say no, they have to go ring the bell. How will they know to do that?
That's a good point.
They need somebody being like, hey, this is happening. You got to go ring the bell or something, right? And with the abbot being in the position he is, I don't think he'd be the one to say it. You know?
Right. That's a good point.
Right. So again, first of all, I love all of this, right? Because as 3 DMs here sitting in a room, if we were to just give the information and not a script, if we just give this information to a player or a DM, these are 3 different scenarios they might have come up with all on their own too, right? So like that's kind of the goal, right? It's like we don't want to steamroll them. We just want to give them the information necessary. And as I see it, like the simplest explanation tends to be the easiest one here. You know, they've just won the trials. The person in charge of the city and the monastery welcomes them into the courtyard and the monastery to presumably celebrate them. At that point, they realize something is very wrong. I think the instigating moment could very easily just simply be either a blatant sapping of their powers, or he opens the rift, or if we really want to get like truly cinematic, you know, it's time to celebrate your victory. All bell wardens go up into their towers. New bell wardens go ring your bells. They all ring, and it was a sabotage, and he collects all 12 powers at once. The other 8 bell wardens, you know, fall unconscious, and our 3 happen to be the only ones left standing, and now they have to defeat him. Like that, like that's all like these are all like super easy kind of like blocks and beats that a DM can just kind of throw in there. The recommended beat is what we're really negotiating here, you know. So I'm good with any of them, honestly. I think they're all really kind of cool. As a person thinking about the new DM, my only concern is sometimes less is more. If I give a new DM 12 powers and 12 bells, they might be overwhelmed.
Right.
Right?
I totally
3 to 4
agree.
is much easier because, like, you know, Tanner won the enduring patience bell, so I know I'm going to use that power against him because that's just fun for me as a DM, right? Rob, he won the trial of the frozen fist, so I'm going to slap him with that one because that's just fun for me, right?
Yeah.
When it's 12, all of a sudden it's like, oh, what do I do on my turn? And you don't want the DM doing that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I totally agree. I think less is more, because we can always just have the abbot just essentially give him a lot of normal abbot powers and just have him leveled enough that he's a challenge, right?
Yeah. Just
Like,
spells.
and then the players get to use their bell powers against him, and maybe he uses theirs against them, you know. But either way, I don't think that we need to give him a billion, you know, different bell powers, and he'll probably be fine.
We're also
Either way.
forgetting, and this happens when we meet every once a month. We said that the quiet ones, the other possible bad actors who were actually going to, if we made the abbot the bad guy, they were going to kind of be revealed to be just really dedicated, but they're not bad guys. And they have the thieves can't, so they could speak using sign language. They were going to help the heroes, right? So there's on the DM's turn, right? There's the DM, and then there's potentially 4 other NPCs. I guess the players could be using the NPCs, but if we give the abbot some kind of like mind flayer power where he can infiltrate them, then he could use those NPCs to attack the players, right? As opposed to having other bell wardens too. They're going to be in that final scene, I imagine.
I actually had this thought while we were talking about the abbot just now. I was like, I just want to clarify the actual people that we'll be fighting, you know, because one, I realized, you know, that in our kind of assignments at the top, that we were like, hey, along with the trials, come up with the villains for each one.
Right.
And I realized, I was like, theoretically, they're the same villains for all of them, you know?
Right.
Because they're, you know, same as how our same 4 or 5 players are going through the trials all together, you know, the same group of 4 or 5 people from the other monastery would also be, you know, kind of opposing us the entire time. And I realized that after I had come up with names for 5 extra monks, and I was like, well, that's overkill. But so I think we do need to clarify their role and everything. And another concern I have I do love having the abbot be one of the encounters, you know, but does it feel a little underwhelming to not actually face any of the creatures that come from, the realm of shadow and silence, right? It
Right.
feels a little underwhelming to me. I'm like, because that's kind of like, that's the real big bad. And while we're having the players fight the abbot, that almost feels like it should be a midpoint fight or a mini boss on the way to the actual kind of final encounter. And I'm not saying that we fight the big bad, but I am saying that we maybe, while the players are trying to ring all the bells, there's multiple small like creatures or something to medium size trying to keep them from doing it, and it's kind of like a survival thing where they're trying to ring these bells while staying alive and getting around, because I was like, otherwise we just don't fight them, and that kind of, it feels underwhelming. I don't know.
I agree.
Kind of to Rob's point about making it simple, I think we should write down kind of one string of events. I know it's a little bit railroady, but like this is the one shot, and then once we get that done, we can kind of add in some twists and turns, but like add in one definite string of events. So as far as the silent ones, I would say for right now, let's leave them as somewhat of a red herring. Let's let the abbot be faced by only the players, just for sake of simplicity. And then to your point, Tanner, for that last part, what we can do is we can add kind of a legendary action to summon some of those dark ones, the silent ones or whatever. And they don't have a ton of hit points or whatnot, but they're more so harrying tools. So if you don't get rid of them, they do start taking a toll. And if you use an action on them, you can't use an action on the abbot or something like that. And then one other thought that would be kind of cool is once they all ring the bells and they summon the Paragon, it would be kind of cool to do like a Mechazord fight Paragon versus, like the whole table has to agree on, in this turn, we're going to use this mega awesome move. And we know that the baddie's going to use this mega awesome move. And it's kind of like, you're level 5 for all of the one shot, but then randomly at the end, you're like level 30 and you're all one player, Like my brother has a module or whatever that allows you to do levels 21 to 30. So we could, look up some of the rules for that and maybe that's kind of what I was saying. Like once we have the actual one shot down, we start adding in the bells and whistles. Maybe that's one of the whistles, but I think that would be also funny.
So I like that. I think, and I'm also very keen on, like, I'm a big fan right now of the skill challenge, like running a massive battle at the end, like as an add-on potential, but as a skill challenge, so you don't have to fight every single minion running around, but as a skill challenge, you've now been imbued with like this level 30 power. What would you like to do on your turn? You tear through the streets, vaporizing 100, of these, little, that would be kind of cool. So then let's just, if we can, let's do this, if you don't mind. Can we, I think we all agree that after the trials are completed, the abbot will get them to the final destination with a false invitation. Does that sound like something we could all second?
Yes.
Or do you want,
So,
I think, right.
Here,
You've won the trials. Congratulations. Come on up to the monastery to receive your blessings or a celebratory meal, whatever. The abbot's going to invite him to the final spot, right?
Yeah. Okay. I agree. I can get behind that. Yes.
Okay. So, trials end. Like that's the initiation of the final section. And then the abbot invites them to somewhere.
Oh, well, he could say, please come to the courtyard where your newfound powers are needed to close the rift. Even, just we need you to come up to the monastery. Come with me.
So I just realized kind of a big flaw. What if the players didn't win the bells? Like, what if someone else did?
I wrote. Hang on, I did think of this. If you run up to the trial that the Dancer of Broken Ice, running the trial is a skill challenge, running the trial traditional mechanics, role-playing outcomes. If one or more PCs are the first to reach the Bell of Winter's Blessing, they are successful. Upon choosing the recipient, the bell becomes wreathed in frost. The frost crystallizes and the name of the PC appears on the bell. If the PCs are unsuccessful, or if an NPC wins the trial, the Bell of Winter's Blessing still plays a function in the adventure. See the finale. The bell has a form of sentience and does not necessarily have to choose or impart its powers to the winner of the trial. If the bell, the bell is kind of intelligent in its own right. So let's just say one of the quiet ones were to win. We can complicate that in a couple of ways. The quiet ones are going to be in the final battle scene, and so they can be the one to ring the bell while the player is the one to harry the abbot. Or the bell might still choose one of our players, as a sort of kind of convenient plot twist. But it's there. It is there.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to ask. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead, please, Rob.
We started there and then we kind of abandoned it. Maybe we want to go back to this. Originally, upon entering Jinglefell, there was like a town clerk, kind of like state your name, profession, what do you want to do while you're here, and then he would give all the players like a jingle bell that they would then carry around. I was thinking that if they win the trial, and this way they can all attempt every trial instead of having just one person do it while all the others are on the sideline. If they win, the trial bell kind of charges their bell, like I think I put this in the notes, like a Green Lantern kind of ring. And in this way, there's more opportunities for success if we want to let everybody attempt the trial instead of just one person per part, in the party. But that's one way to maybe get potential victors, even if it's an NPC. More people can walk away with that, and then they all are, whoever won the trials are brought to the courtyard to see which one is chosen by the bell, and maybe the abbot needs to see that as well, so he knows who to go after. It can kind of be an interesting way of getting everybody involved in every trial, as opposed to having kids on the sideline.
Yeah,
I just worry about time.
Yeah.
Like each of these trials will take presumably a bit of time. And kind of going back to simplicity, I would prefer the last battle to have no NPCs other than like the villains. I think that would make it easier for the dungeon master. And yeah.
We may have to do away with the no sound regional effect then, because it was their chant, their sort of monk's cant that was going to be the way to communicate during that silence.
Agreed. I think that story-wise, since there's going to be some exposition from the abbot himself, or herself, either one, then we need that exposition, frankly.
So, what if we turn the Shadow of Silence into a legendary action or a lair action that, every so often for this entire round, the abbot makes this happen, or something like that.
Or even just maybe it's a legendary effect of the big, kaiju fight going on in the background, where once, every so often for one whole round there is no speaking. You could do something like that. Yeah, right. That's cool. That's a lot. That's a way to keep it in there and just kind of make it a fun complication as opposed to a debilitating, crippling effect.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all, honestly. Okay, so trials end. The abbot invites the bell wardens to the courtyard for the celebration. I guess the next thing would be Rift opens.
Okay, and also the courtyard that he invites them to, that is the main center courtyard with the bells in it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I would say that it depends. Because there are, simplicity's sake, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Tanner. I just say we get like we don't do any depends. We just do it this, and this, and then
Yes.
in an appendix we can be like, now if you want a more interesting one shot or something like that, in section
Right.
this and this, do this instead or something like that.
Yeah.
So the rift opens, and then what?
Players have to be so the rift opens.
Bell wardens leave. Maybe the other bell wardens leave and we can come up with a reason why. But that's like
Right.
it's important
That's
that they
what
leave,
happens.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to leave. They can't be present. They have to go delay. And so, yeah, in the backdrop for the first half of this fight, it's the big silencer fighting the remaining 8 bell wardens. Yeah, but again, the problem here is the abbot is definitely going to go after those powers, and it kind of makes a mess of the DM's turn a little bit. At least that's my mind's eye. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It's just otherwise he's just got the power of the party, the PC's spells, right? Because if there's only, and again, in our mind's eye, we're picturing 3 to 4 players. Now, if there are 2 people playing, the abbot's going to steal 2 powers. Got to be.
I feel like I'm playing 4D chess with like 17 people right now.
Honestly, I know that we have this whole like the abbot stealing the bells thing kind of going on. I almost feel like his end goal could be simpler, which is just making sure that nobody really becomes a true, like, fills those extra empty bell warden slots long enough for chaos to reign, and then for people to be like, oh, the bells, the monastery is important. Because if that's the case, then it becomes a lot easier. We just give the abbot-like powers, for combat that aren't necessarily connected with bells, and we can kind of just avoid that scene. Otherwise, I would say we could maybe just do like 4 powers and keep it simple. I don't know.
My only hiccup with that is each one of the bells was going to give a boon, and I imagine some kind of defensive protection against that particular element, right, or that particular facet that will not now be used against them if the abbot or some person does not inhabit that power to then use it. Like, so the way the Frozen Fist is really cool, I now have an extra 1d4 frost damage, but I don't get to use my resistance to cold damage if nobody is attacking me with this power.
Cold damage. True.
Right.
That's very true, actually.
And so we could do a couple things, right? We don't have to pin this down today. We can all write a version of the ending of this and then compare notes.
Agreed.
We can. Another thing that's been really helping me out, and maybe I'll do this off air if you'd like, I will share some of the artwork that I've been able to glean, and we could use the artwork as inspiration because we want our art to kind of marry what we're doing to the book anyway, right? So there's some cool art ideas that I have in terms of, I'll show you. And then lastly, like, we can have, like we said, we can do a couple of alternate endings, or as long as we get them to where they need to be, and the DM knows who the bad guy is, we don't have to force the issue. Let the DM kind of make some choices. I just want to give them tools that they need, especially new DMs, to kind of flesh out the end of this adventure for their PCs.
Yeah.
So here's what I say we do. We have a few minutes left. Let's go through and give out assignments for each of us. At this top section, I'm going to delete some of the parts that we've finished. I feel like it's just gumming things up a little bit, if that's okay with you guys.
That's fine.
So the trials descriptions, we're all good with that, right?
I believe we are.
Okay. I'm going to delete that.
Pretty much. For this first draft, yes.
Okay. I don't know why it's copied it like 3 times, but whatever.
Yeah, it's copied it a billion times.
Yeah. The Abbott speech, it's down for the first draft.
Yep.
We can edit it later. I'm
Yes.
going to delete
Agreed.
that.
That's great.
Can you just hide it? Instead
abilities
of, is it possible to hide the column, or does it only get deleted? This way, if we needed to reopen it just for any reason. I'm just trying to see. Is it possible?
Sort.
It's
I
not
don't
like
see.
the computer's running slow because I'm running. Nope. Okay.
Yeah,
Never
I
mind. You
don't
can
see
just
it.
delete it then.
So-
That's fine. Yeah, you can
Okay.
just delete it then.
Describe the Shadow of Silence and its mechanical effects. That's the same thing as this regional effect. Well, okay, so I'm going to delete this row and instead
That's fine.
change it here. So it's not regional effects, but it's the layer
Yeah.
layer effects
Or-
of the giant big bad. Layer effects / action. Is that what it is?
Mhm.
Did anyone want to do that particularly?
I think we should just wait until we maybe pin down
Okay.
a little bit more of what the final showdown will look like.
Okay. Quiet One, Stat Block, Bell of the Frozen Fist. Abilities of the Bell of the Lost One. That one's done. We don't need it.
Yeah, you could delete the Frozen Fist one too, right? The short version players. I wrote it there.
Uh-oh. Yeah, 1 second. I think I just... Yep. Control Z. There we go. Okay. Delete row. Okay. And then this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, I don't think we need that right now, right?
It's already done. We did that actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's in the draft too.
Final Bell, Challenge, Mechanic Descriptions.
We can get rid of that because well. It's the solution to beating the Abbott, right?
Okay. So maybe we change that to final encounter rules and
Yeah.
mechanics.
That's fine.
Okay. Final Abbott Courtyard Scenery Description. NPC creations. Can we get rid of this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Layout, Rob. Representation and trigger warnings. Battle map creation. 5e compatible. Description of the ancient silencer. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't need to be his name. I just didn't know what to call him yet.
And then
Yeah.
Quiet One stat blocks. Rob took care of that, right?
I'm 1 of 4 are completed, but yeah, I got that.
Well, didn't you have 4
Oh.
characters?
Yes, I have 4 graphics, and I have 1 full stat block.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh, the description is done. You know what? You can just delete the description. I wrote the description. That's right.
Okay.
I put that in the wrong spot.
Okay.
And again, if I'm not married to any, if you wanted to, I know that Tanner, you said you created some. If you wanted to kind of reskin, one of those characters you wrote and just fill it in for any one of those remaining quiet ones, you're more than welcome to.
Honestly,
gonna
I
delete-
liked yours the first time. I really liked those.
I'm gonna delete this DM tips. I figured that'll come right before the first draft is edited or after, or
Yes.
something like that.
Agreed.
That graphic is proving rather tedious for me. I had like the little scroll. The scroll
Yeah.
is just driving me nuts, so I may have to just make it like an actual text block.
We'll do NPC stat blocks. Well,
I don't know if we need them.
yeah, because we have Quiet One stat blocks, we have Abbott stat blocks, we have Silencer stat blocks, so I think that's everything covered.
I created a monk, who would head my trial, and I was thinking about making a stat block for them. It's hard for me to imagine like a big bad happening in the city, and then like the people who are running the trials not going to help. So I'm
Yeah.
still on the fence about whether or not we need to to do that or not, or if they would just play like a minor role in getting people to safety. So yeah, we really don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I imagine it is very much like Avengers. Aliens are falling from the sky. Everyone's kind of fighting where they are.
Right.
With no real direction except getting out of the city.
Fair.
I'm going to delete this right out the pacing of the Open of the Rift. I feel like we kind of changed direction a little bit. Okay, so now let's add new assignments. So trials end. That's nothing that needs to be righted about. Okay, we need to have someone write out the courtyard celebration, like events, any read aloud scripts, things like that. Okay. So let's put this at the top. Insert row below. Write out courtyard celebration events and read aloud text. Okay. Who wants to take care of that?
Which one was it?
This one. So basically, the trial ends, and then writing kind of the feast celebration dinner type thing. Like, what happens?
Basically, what leads from them finishing the trials to the rift opening, and what that looks like.
Yeah. Again, I don't mind taking on any extra work here. That's fine.
From trial.
Well, I mean, anyone can do that. I can do it.
Yeah, I'll see. I think that.
Why don't we just leave it up there, and if whoever tackles it, just claims it.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Next one is Rift opens. We could probably just edit up above, what I've already written, and shift that. Silencer comes out. Same thing. Bell wardens leave / become incapacitated. Abbott final fight. Abbott reveals himself. Okay. So I think all of this is pretty much incorporated into this section, right? Any other assignments you guys think we need to outline? Yeah.
I'm sure they'll come to me as I'm putting together the actual draft of it. That's
Gotcha.
Really helping me right now in terms of like organizing and things like that. I guess the only other thing would be if we are going to bring back the larger force of bell wardens. I guess their powers. I don't know how specific we want to get with that.
Well, the way I imagined it is because they are more closely tied to the bells that they have. We don't really necessarily need to we just need to explain you and all the other bell wardens come to the celebratory feast. The rift opens, they leave, and
Right.
as they leave, they explain, "Hey, you need to go ring your bells now because we need to put this thing back where it came from, or so help me."
Only when you're full bell wardens, right? Can we summon the Paragon?
Yeah. And they're basically like, "Hey, we're going to go fight this thing with all of our powers. You guys need to go ring your bells to actually create the connection."
So
that's how I imagined it.
Maybe we should add that to the list then, summoning the Paragon.
So I think, from what I understand, this number 8, 7 and 8 is essentially like you beat the abbot, and in order to beat the abbot, you summon the Paragon or something like that. Like, it's kind of the same process. That's what I understood.
In my mind's eye, I was kind of where Tanner was like, let's let the abbot just try to delay the good guys here for a minute,
Okay.
so that it can wreak its havoc after beating the abbot, which is more of the actual combat mechanics traditional to like a D&D fight. We can build in, and again, it's probably like an add-on or as an appendix, a sort of skill challenge or level 30 Paragon versus the Ancient Silencer battle
Okay.
if time permitted, and if they really felt
Yeah.
inclined to like, let's get that payoff of doing that. Otherwise, I think giving the abbot a couple of nominal powers that are similar to the bells, or even the ability to summon a couple of these, like, small silencers, these kind of like demi-dogs, Demogorgon level kind of,
Yeah.
not D&D Demogorgon, Stranger Things Demogorgon level kind of creatures, to kind of keep them busy while the silencer kind of tears up the town in the background. It would be really cool to, like, while they're fighting, the bell warden from Phil in one of our cool bell towers, gets batted out of the sky and crashes into the courtyard. He picks up his magic hammer and charges back into the fray. Like
Yeah,
Thorns gets
yeah.
clobbered down, and
Yeah.
so like interrupting all of these, kind of cool like moments where you can see, like,
Yeah. Very cinematic.
Yeah, we don't have a fire. I have all these fire monk artworks, but we don't have a fire bell. So like it would be kind of cool to be like, flames shoot from so and so at the ancient silencer, barely doing any kind of damage.
No, I think that's great. Like we could easily be like, here's an appendix of some other cool looking monks that you can have, interrupt every once in a while. So, is
alternate
this kind of
endings.
exactly? Is this timeline good for you guys? So bell wardens leave, become incapacitated. Abbott reveals himself in his plans. Abbott, the final fight happens with the Abbott. Abbott is incapacitated, and then the Paragon needs to be summoned via a skill challenge or however, and then bonus Paragon versus Silencer mecha fight.
Yeah.
Is that like a fairly good timeline?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome.
All right.
So, I'd say as far as final, what's it called? Assignments, each of us can write out like different ways this happens or whatnot. I'd encourage each of us to focus on keeping it simple, getting this kind of first line of events happening down, and then, or if you want, you can also add in an appendix or something like, at this section, here's an alternate version to do this or what have you. So I think that's everything. Thank you guys so much for doing this. This is fun. We're getting closer and closer. I'm excited to finally be able to run this and test it out. But listener, thank you for being a fly on the wall. Tanner, Rob, anything you guys want to say?
It's true. This is, as far as a dirty draft goes, I really enjoy this one. This is going pretty well.
Yeah, so I think without further ado then, we'll let you guys go, and we'll see you here next week for another episode. And until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative. You obviously have good taste. I mean, you listen to How to Be a Better DM, after all. We thank you so much for your support. And if you've ever gotten anything useful from How to Be a Better DM, take a minute and rate us and review us on your podcast listening app of choice. It goes a very long way to helping our show help many more dungeon masters out there who are just like you. If you love our content, help others become better dungeon masters too. Brought to you by Session Zero Studios. For more information, visit sessionzerostudios.com.